Hello, family, and welcome to Hope TV. I'm Edward Smith. I'm one of our Hope dealers here, and I'm so excited and so thankful that you've tuned in to get a daily dose of hope. We live in a world of such bad news, and everywhere we turn, sometimes things may be devastating to so many people, but we're here to let you know that there's always inspiration, there's always empowerment, and I'm so thankful and incredibly honored that you take a portion of your time to be a part of our network here. We're excited. We started this network. Uh, God gave me a vision back in March of 2020 at the onset of the pandemic that we would still stay in touch with our community, local community throughout the pandemic. And so we started the Hope TV, and you never could have told me that in March of 2020 that within 12 months we would have over 100 million views of our content via the cumulative platforms. And so I'm incredibly honored and humbled that you spend your time with us. So if you're here today, whether you're watching through Apple TV, Roku, Twitch, Amazon, Fire TV, if you're watching through Facebook, if you're watching through YouTube, Instagram, Twitter, if you're watching through the edwindsmith.org website, the House of Hope Atlanta website, or the HTV Now website, however you're viewing, thank you for your viewership. It means the world to us. And if you're watching, drop me a line and let me know the city, state, and the country from whence you're viewing. We take your viewership very, very seriously here at the Hope TV. So thank you once again. And if you're watching through a platform that will allow you to subscribe, to like, to comment, or to share, would you please do so now? Every time you subscribe, you can get notifications as to when new content is uploaded. And that's very, very helpful. That also helps us as we bring even more content, more programming to our network here. And so subscribe now to get those notifications. Also, those when you hit those that like button, that's so very important because it helps us with our algorithms, and it also helps us during interactive forums to, if you have any questions, so that we can respond to you live. So that like button is so very, very important. Your comments are also important. Your questions and your comments, because it helps us in our content creation as well, and it helps us with our algorithms and our social media engagement. So subscribe, like, comment, and most importantly, please share. Every time you share, that helps us to really get exponential capability, and we just want the world to know there's hope. You know, we hear so much from CNN and MSNBC and Fox and CBS and ABC and NBC and C-SPAN, and we want you to know that there's a word of hope that can come to deal with real issues, but really affect and change and empowerment in our community. I'm excited about this first one-on-one of season 5. This season has just commenced, and we took a few months off. We've been running so hard with Hope TV, and I want to thank those of you who have been with us and still connected to our programming as we were playing programs from the first 4 seasons. But all new content, I'm excited that you're here with us for one-on-one. Today I'm excited because we're talking about a subject that has been very, very dear to our hearts, and I think something that's very, very important for our community, because we're focusing on mental and emotional health. And today we have a qualified, capable, powerful person who's going to join me today for this conversation. And I want you to be blessed. If you're going through something, community, those who just been kind of feeling depressed or nostalgic, or if you've been feeling a sense of melancholy or not feeling quite your best, so much has happened in the past 18, 19 months, so much death and so many changes in the world. And if you just want to, somebody who's been kind of going through some things, I want you to share this link with them right now, because we're going to have a powerful word today and some powerful information that's going to help us. So go ahead and subscribe, like, comment, and share. It's going to be preeminently important. So today I have a guest with us who's going to come and bless us, and I speak of none other than Dr. Celina Primo, who's coming to bless us. And so I'm excited. Dr. Celina, I hope I got your last name correct. I just know Dr. Celina. She was introduced to us by my good friend, and who just has said so much about you. And Ken Lewis, who's been my friend down through the years, who has spoken so highly of you, and to get an opportunity to research you and see what you're doing means the world to us. So welcome, Dr. Celina. Would you tell us about yourself today? I know you've been working in
Yes.
mental health for a long time, so tell us about yourself.
Well, I'm so honored to be here. And yes, Kenneth has been my friend for like 40 years. We probably were two, not true, but we were very young. And we've been like brother and sister ever since. And so I'm from Martha's Vineyard Island. I live in Massachusetts, originally from New York. And I started my journey here. And God has blessed me with the journey of going through all of the mental and emotional health abuses so that I could come out and tell these stories. And He allowed me this walk into this journey where now I can help others to get through their stories as well. So I am in 30 years in practice. I have a private practice. I'm still very active in my practice. I am a trauma specialist, and needless to say, that was the path that I guess I was supposed to be on, and here I am. Praise the Lord! And so I'm here to hopefully open doors, open hearts, and open minds to us looking a little deeper into what causes us to sometimes get a little block, stopped, or flatlined in our steps, and help us to move forward and find our way through some of that, and maybe reclaim our voice in some ways.
Wow, you said so much. I mean, 30 years of practice, trauma, the reclamation of our own voices. Um, that perfect segue. Thank you for what you've done and who you are,
Thank you.
and just sharing that story because it's so powerful, and this you can feel the authenticity coming through cyberspace. One of the things I want to ask you, relative to where we are now, I'm fortunate that we've been advocates for mental health for several years now, a decade or so that we've had a counseling center, etc. But I want to jump right into this conversation. I don't know if people understand necessarily the trauma of what has happened to us the past 19 months with the pandemic. I think sometimes we may not categorize it as trauma. I know there are other personal traumas that many of us have endured, but would you say that the pandemic has been a trauma for citizens around the globe?
Well, absolutely. I mean, we have to look at all of the effects that things have happened. But let me go before the pandemic, if I may,
Please.
because you see, what happens sometimes in in our walk is that we carry so many burdens, right? Trauma walks with us through life, through things we see, through communities we live in, through experiences that we've been exposed to, through personal identifications and gentrifications and whatever it might be that we are involved in our lives, and things that may have crossed in front of us, around us, and through us, and taken some of our soul away, right? So when the pandemic, before the pandemic came, I was doing a lot of talking about unconsciousness because I kept on seeing this unconsciousness happening. And it was mass murders of insane magnitudes, and killing of just innocent children, and groupings and churches and communities. I mean, we've always had our battle with our communities and those kinds of things that were happening, but this was becoming unconscious. Things were happening unconsciously, and so it's like almost like the air of the pandemic was it was immersing. And so what else can we imagine that could happen in when the pandemic truly stood in front of us, when we have all of that stuff behind us that's been walking and following and living inside of us? So
Hmm.
what's going to happen, right? So I do a lot of work with domestic violence. I do a lot of work with child sexual abuse. I was actually one of the grandmothers to opening the doors for children to say that someone's hurting them. That's okay to say, to tell their story. Back in the early '80s, actually. So the pandemic kind of took all that stuff that was back there that we really haven't addressed, and that was accumulating and compounding and becoming more complex, and created this
Hmm.
unconsciousness, right? And then where did it happen? all those triggers that we were living with that we weren't really, because we have to work. I have to move on to the next thing. I don't have time for this. I got to feed my family. I've got to, get to my next vacation or whatever it might be. So then the pandemic comes and sits in front of us and says, oh, well, hold up. I got another story to tell you that you can create. And here's one to add to your collection. Now, how are you going to survive this? So let's talk about the word uncertainty. So the pandemic came with the word uncertainty, right? Uncertainty. So now
Yes.
we're having some decompensations of our communities, right? Our
Yes.
communities were decompensating. I mean, families were kind of falling apart over these last many years. And I think we were losing. I got another premise on the family we can talk about another time. But we also had our communities that were decaying, right? Lots of decay going with gentrification and us losing in so much in deaths and what have you. So the pandemic only fed that. So in my book, I've written a book called, I'll show you. It's called, can you see this? Probably not the lights,
Yes.
but it's called Five Keys to Emotional Oneness, the Emotional Detox System.
Yes.
And this book comes from us creating toxicities, emotional toxicities, right?
Mm.
And so what the pandemic did was created what I call the emotional encryptors. And the emotional encryptors are these little bad guys, these little bad Pac-Men that come in and start shooting at you and say, wake up, now let face this. So when the pandemic stood in front of us and said, here's your reality, what was happening with all the stuff we left behind? It just flooded. And people were
Mm.
triggered. So the brain said, oh, wait a minute, hold on. I mean, I'm getting this overflow of memories. Oh my God, what's all these things? Where did that come from? I have people calling me saying, I just remembered this horrific thing that happened to me in my childhood because they've been
Wow.
sitting for a year with nothing else to do but fit in fear, sit in
Mm.
fear, fit in fear, and live in fear, right? So now
Mm.
all of this stuff is working through what we call the limbic system of the brain, where the amygdala lives. And the amygdala is the boss of our emotions, right? And it has the hippocampus holds all of the memories, but the hippocampus can't always hold them all because sometimes there's so many coming in. So now when the pandemic comes, there's so many coming in, there's so much confusion. In my book, I talk about the fragmentations of these emotions. So now we have fragmentations. What's standing in front of me now? My certainties that I created in my days before the pandemic, where I knew I had to go to work, maybe two jobs, maybe I had a good job. I had to feed my family. I had to pay bills. I had to do these certain things, and I had to live within a framework. And I had created this community, and I created this family blend. And everything is working in the magnitude or in the formation that it's supposed to be working in, and this is manageable. So that was the certainty. Some people couldn't go beyond that certainty. So now it comes the uncertainty. But my certainty doesn't work in this uncertainty. So how
Mm.
do I move myself forward? Do you see all the blockages that are coming?
What's up, y'all? It's your boy Jermaine, Dolly, Mr. Hello, Dolly himself. And guess what? You're tuned in to Tea and Worship with my homies, Mignon and Corey. Keep it out, y'all.
Hey y'all, it's Candy West, and you're watching Tea and Worship with Mignon and Corey.
It's your boy James Fortune, and you are watching my favorite news show, Tea and Worship, with my sis Mignon and Corey.
Let me slow down for just 1 second because
Okay.
I want to make sure that we are processing this sequentially. So let's kind of unpack this unconsciousness. I want to ask you this because we got to get to the detox and the book and the certainty, the fragmentation. But I want to deal with that unconsciousness. What do you think, or why? What are the reasons for the unconsciousness? Is this something that's hereditary, something we've just learned to cope with based upon our parents, our environments? What causes that sense of unconsciousness or suppression, or the failure or inability to deal with those realities? What's in that, and how do we avoid the unconsciousness?
So I see the unconsciousness, this process of the unconscious as numbing. So we have in our central nervous system, right? We have a hormone called cortisol. So when we get stressed, do we on a normal day have stressors? On a normal
Absolutely.
day, we all face stressors, right? And again, we have the compilation of all that stuff that's back there comes forward. So when we have a stressor, it brings up our nervous system. It's called the sympathetic nervous system. It brings it up, and we live in this place. Here's the interesting thing, Pastor. When we were children and we were exposed to all of these variations of emotional pieces of things that happened, okay, whatever they might have been, our brain takes in this information. Sometimes our heart and the brain aren't talking together. We'll talk about that another time. So when we're getting those pieces of information, we put them somewhere. We don't say, oh, I'm going to remember this and take a picture of it and deal with that later. No, we suppress it, right? We repress things, and they live inside of us. And those images, they create this survival way that we live in our brain, in terms of how we get from point A to point B, what we have to do, how we, when the stresses come and they trigger it, there goes our system, and it attaches to that survival modality, and it lives there, and it causes, in another part of the brain, it causes this thing called a numbing, right? So we get numbed. We don't want, when it gets so bad, the unconscious, and you can't handle it, and you can't cope with things anymore, and things keep on falling apart, you become unconscious, you become disconnected, dissociative.
Hmm.
You split up.
Wow. So, in your estimation, the pandemic, the quietness, and the aloneness made the unconscious conscious, perhaps, and we have no way of dealing with it, perhaps.
In a very destructive manner.
Hmm.
So what did it feed? What did the pandemic feed? And this is what I call my emotional feeders. So our emotional feeders in my book are things like guilt, shame, blame. Those are the things that really feed the stuff, right? Shame's huge. So whatever you're living with inside of that body, inside of that mind and spirit, when the pandemic came and things were still falling apart, just domestic violence ratings went out the window, right?
Yeah.
Children were being more abused. There was substance abuse became they were incredibly high. So when things were falling apart because there was no work, There's no movement. We're social beings. Even those of us
Yeah.
who didn't carry a whole bunch of maybe horrific trauma in our life still were very impacted by no movement, no socialization, no ability to get out and process, and becoming stagnant within the social media. I mean, thank God there was some outlets, but so we're feeding the wrong stuff. The wrong stuff was getting fed. Many of us went the other direction. Many of us said, well, I'm going to take this time. I'm going to build. I'm going to create new things. I call it my re-tempos. I'm going to re-tempo myself, re-rhythm myself. I'm going to recreate. I'm going to redevelop. I'm going to those of us that were able to do that. But those that were already stricken by this dissociative blend of things didn't have the opportunity to probably process through it. And things got worse within it. And they still are pretty bad, aren't they? They're not horrific as they were. But the pandemic has caused a shutting down, I think, of our systems, and maybe kept that stress, that hormone at a pace where it's always on the rise. And that keeps us at a sympathetic place where we can't make those decisions. So here's what happens. When we stay in that part of the brain, which is in the mid-center of the brain, the executive functioning of the brain dims down, and other parts of the brain dims down. We have to know our whole body. This is not just about knowing about what makes me feel sad and mad and what makes me feel guilty and shameful. We have to know how it affects not only our body, but how's it affecting us physiologically. What's happening to our organs? So there's so many interactions going on that the pandemic has caused for people who are sitting there trying to figure out their next move. Many of us were fortunate enough to sustain and keep moving, but still we didn't move ourselves. We're still sitting in this position.
So let me ask this. So we come from the unconscious, all the past things. Pandemic arises to bring them to the forefront. Some of us are able to process correctly in that we recreate, we produce, we build, we grow. Others don't do it so favorably, so it has more of a traumatic effect on them. And that is where you mentioned the word indicators and emotional toxicity.
Mm-hmm.
So how do the indicators work with that, with the negativity that has arisen as a result of the pandemic?
So the emotional intruders, that's okay. So the emotional intruders awaken. See, the emotional intruders are those little things that still live within us. Those are the things that shift our character, right? They shift the way we think about things. They shift us in the matter of like what things that we may have been able to cope with or hold on to or sit back on. We get more confrontative about them. Maybe we get a little bit more irritated easily. We get a little bit more, or some of those characteristics that we don't let everyone see start to show up more readily. So those are the emotional triggers. The triggers are what cause that. It's the triggers that we're not dealing with that cause the emotional intruders to activate. So, and somebody says, "Wow, you're different. You're different today. What's going on with that?" So, when you get agitated, when life gives you some turns, when you start losing people, let's think of the families that lost family members. These were, maybe healthy families, maybe their emotional mental health was pretty stable. What did that do? That tears you up, right? When you're losing one, maybe two, and then you can't touch them, see them, feel them, or go or bury them. Think about what that does to us. We're feeling human beings. So there are so many things in this pandemic that we had to fight through, or we had to flight through, or we freezed through.
R. Kelly, is he muted?
or cancel for you?
I'm not canceling TP2.com because that's my joint. I'm not going to be able to do it.
Look, we're going to get all in there today. Going back to church. Are you ready to get in the house, or are you ready to stay online?
I don't want to catch COVID. I'm ready, but I want to be safe.
Burnout in 2021, do you feel it?
I am going, not trying to get burnt out because I understand how it is. If you dodge there tomorrow, your job description is going to be on somebody's Indeed.
Hey, Dad. I need your help asking Jessica to prom.
Of course. Love is like the ocean. You have to tread the
Oh,
waters.
Dad. That's not the kind of help I needed. Hey, Jessica. Will you go to prom with me?
Yes.
You don't have to be perfect to be a perfect parent. Thousands of teens in foster care can't wait to share their first with you.
You had this epiphany based on what your grandmother had done. Saved money for 6 months, paid off debt, slept on the floor. And because of this conversion moment, you literally are sitting on the board of a bank that wouldn't have even given you a loan.
I was a pastor of a church. I was spending so much money dressing like a preacher, driving preacher cars. If I'm spirit-filled, the same Holy Ghost that makes me shout can make me wait. Wait until I can afford a BMW and stop giving money, donating money to big banks, paying them 18% interest for the right to use their credit card to buy something I can't afford. It's a mentality.
You talked about the emotional toxicity. I think you mentioned the toxicity as well. So the toxicity is a result of the intruders taking over. Is that correct?
So the toxicities is result of what has consumed us through our lives, right? It's the buildup of the consumptions, the negative consumptions, the negative influxes, the negative implications. It's a buildup. So the negative intruders live in the toxicities. They're the families in the toxicities. So when the toxicities get to a high level, right? When you get high level of trash or high level of whatever, then all of a sudden you get some type of something emerges from it, murk or whatever, or gases, or so we get these intruders, and they get to the point because now our emotions have shifted, right? So our emotions have shifted. So now they're saying, oh, now we have ownership because all the toxicity. So I can think of I'm thinking, oh, this is Dr. Celina. She lives on Martha's Vineyard. Oh, she has a good life. No, because when I go through my stories and who I really am authentically, I'm Celina Pina, who grew up in New Bedford, Mass, in a non-English speaking family, and we were poor. We were poor, and we were exposed to a lot of things. I saw a lot of things, and a lot of things happened in our communities and personally to me. And so, and lots of those things I lived through, but some of those things are still living inside of me. So when those toxicities come up, they're grabbing onto those things. Like I went through one today. I was in a class today, and one of those toxicities came up, and I almost had a panic attack. I thought I got rid of it, but it told me, no, you're not done yet. So it's things that have accumulated in our lives, and we take some of those little things for granted. We've got to take good care of ourselves. The detox is any detox. We have to look at ourselves. We have to know. I have written a curriculum where we take people through a whole lot of stuff. We can talk another time on that as well. But the toxicities and the intruders are fed by the toxicities. So what else lives in the toxicities is the emotional feeders. So the emotional feeders is blame, shame, guilt, fault, fear, all of those kinds of emotions, right? They live in those toxicities because shame, because I can think of things that happened in because I lived the life of a victim for maybe 20 good years of my life or more. And I was lost, and I was like on the subway with God, and I'd say, I'm back, I'm here, God, I'm talking to you. And I'd go back down, I'd be like, okay, now I'm doing your thing, you come back up. Oh, nope, I'm back, I'm trying to get back up here, right? That's shameful. Because when I was going back down, it was shameful. And that shame doesn't leave all the time, because it kind of reminds you every now and then. You know, your children ask you a question, kind of, how do I answer that? Remind you every now and then. When you go to church and your pastor asks you questions like, how do I, so it lives, the feeders feed the intruders, and they all live in the house of toxicity. Wow. So we got to break out. We have to find a way to be authentic, so when I do my work, I try to get to the core of those toxicities. And we have to look through them, because you have to look inside them, because the realities are inside of them, not on the surface. The surface is all distortions. That's why people dissociate. That's why we have depression. That's why we have anxieties. That's why we have all of those perplexities, right? Those emotional, mental perplexities. And for other reasons as well. But we have to look to them.
You go ahead.
No, I'm done.
I want to make sure that we distinguish between the feeders and the intruders. You said one is shame, guilt, embarrassment. Those are the intruders, right?
The intruders, the feeders are shame, fault, blaming. What I didn't tell you is the intruders are blockers, stoppers, and flatliners.
Blockers? Hold on
Stoppers.
1 second. You just slow down. Let's go back a couple of things, because I want to make sure this is it's a lot of meat on the bone. I want to make sure that people get it. First, you said we can fight, flight, or freeze. In response to, is that in response to the toxicity?
Intruders.
Or the intruders? Okay. Fight, flight, or freeze. And go ahead, and the blockers,
Okay.
the intruders are also what now?
Okay, so fight, flight, and freeze is also. So one night I was sleeping, and before I figured out the title for my book, and I had this dream. And this dream was very vivid, and it was about block, stop, and flatline. And so when I awakened, I thought it was the name of my book, but actually it's the meat that runs through my book. So fight, flight, and freeze are the three areas that happen when we get into a state of stress, or a state of anxiety, or a state of something that's like a fear or whatever, right? Block, stop, and flatline. Block, stop, and flatline are just their grown-up names. They're childhood names. So block is when the feeders are activated in the toxicity. You're in the house of toxicity, and the feeder's like, oh, well, it was your fault. If you weren't there, that would have never happened to you. So now you get shame, you get blame, and you get fault, right? So maybe it's like, I'm not buying into that a whole lot, but maybe I shouldn't have been there. So but it blocks you. Some parts of this toxicity is blocking me, causing me to maybe get a little bit off my track. Not able to really, I can still go to work, I can still handle my day, I'm still functioning, but it may not be like at my 80%, it may not even be at my 50%, maybe it's 60, maybe. But then they get a little more strange, and then they start saying, oh, but look at this picture. You see this picture? This picture, this is what we're talking about, Celina. This is what we're talking about. Remember this? And then you're like, oh, and you get, then they stop you. Now they're stopping you. Now, if you don't get through stop and get back over there, try to get back up the block, get some help, get some to talk to, get some supports, they're going to stop you. And you're going to start living, and things are going to start being a little bit more sensitive to you. You're going to start seeing things a little bit more differently. You're going to start feeling a little bit more slow down, probably move down to maybe your 45, excuse me, your 45%. And then if you let it go on, and they really give you the activation of that image, then it will flatline you, bring you into a dissociation, or bring you into, and dissociation doesn't always mean that you're splitting personalities. Dissociation means that you're going out. You're going out to your safe place. You're going there to hide, to become invisible, to get free from that. So that's your depression. That's the thing that keeps you down. So now you're not getting up. Maybe you're at 10%. So the intruders are block, stop, and flatline, which are representative of fight, flight, and freeze. The intruders are block, stop, and flatline. The feeders are all those emotions that start squirting these things at you. And the toxicity is all everything that still lives inside of there, that still causes us to have that gut, that heartbeat that's fast, reading too fast, that gives us that down that we can't get up, and we want to try to move, get some momentum, and our momentum is flat. So we have to get to that. When you stop feeling,
Let me ask you this question.
Yeah.
Let me ask you this question, because you mentioned about your experience today, you know, when the anxiety started to creep back in. Will we always live in the house of toxicity?
So, no, because we're going to work on it. We have to acknowledge it. We will if we don't acknowledge it. We got to talk about it. We got to pray on it. You know, I'll tell you the truth. If it wasn't, my first walk was with God that got me off that train I was on. I mean, it was a big fight, but he grabbed me and finally said, okay, your lessons are done. Now it's time to build you. So my book is really based on that, my pain through my purpose. So we have to work on, we have to talk about it. It's okay. That's why we got to get to the realities of them. Yes, when I was a little girl, I was so hungry. One time we didn't have any food. I ate some rice pudding off the floor. My neighbor gave me some. It fell down. I ate it off the floor. I can't eat rice pudding today because it upsets my stomach. But I acknowledge that I was poor and I ate the rice pudding and it saved me for that moment. So rather than being upset with the rice pudding, I looked at how it saved me for that moment and not be embarrassed by it. Not let it be a buildup in that house of toxicity, right?
Wow.
We have to look at the realities and the truths. We have to get to the core, look at the realities and the truths. And that comes through different venues, through church, through therapy, through friendship, through family, through supports, depending on what's going on. You don't have to live there.
Let me, this is so incredibly rich, and we're out of time already. And I mean, it's you're blessing me. You know, it's just causing me to think and reflect. You know what I mean? And I'm supposed to be, facilitating this session for everybody else. And as you're talking, it's just so powerful.
Thank you.
And so the person who's watching right now, because my assumption from what you're saying, because I haven't read your book, is that when those intruders come, our response should be to fight. But flight and freezing happens. And so I believe there are some people who are watching right now who may be not fighting. You know, I've been those spots. They're frozen and they're trying to flee, to disassociate, to escape it. And I think there's some people right now who need to confront those realities. Some people who are watching even right now didn't know, about the intruders and the house of toxicity, and maybe going down, from that whole piece from the stoppage to the blockage and, into the flatline. So for those people who may want to have a conversation with you, because I do know you have an active practice. So I want you to tell people no more how, if there's a person who wants to talk to you, are you available to help them kind of process through therapy? And if you are, how can they contact you?
Yes, and I am, and I do a lot of global work. So I am available. My email I could give. It's emotional health at drcelinaoneness.com. And my website is drcelinaoneness.com. So emotional health at drcelinaoneness.com is my email. And drcelinaoneness.com is my website. And I'm doing a lot of retreats this year. I'll be doing them internationally. So please join me on a retreat. We're going through the 5 keys of emotional freedom. It's called Optimizing Emotional Freedom and Rhythmic Release. We're going to be dancing our way into change.
Listen, I feel conflicted because I don't want to end this session and I didn't get an opportunity for you to talk about more things with the book. Can you come back? Can you come back next week? I need to finish this conversation.
Absolutely.
Your information is on the screen now. The website information is on the screen now. And now I want to talk about how can people order. Can they order your book on the website as well?
They can go right to Amazon. It's actually an international bestseller. And they can go on to Amazon and get the book.
Listen, so the name of the book one more time.
It's 5 Keys to Emotional Oneness, not the fragmentations, oneness, the emotional detox system.
The emotional detox system. We hear so much about physical detox, but not enough about emotional detox. This has been absolutely powerful. I want those who are watching, listen, Dr. Celina is going to come back for part 2 of this conversation. And I hope you have been encouraged and inspired to just reflect and to pause and slow down long enough to think about just the nuggets that she dropped on us. And I tried to slow it down because she's so, as you can tell, she's so filled with so much insight, and it's impossible to get all this in a 30-minute window. And I just hope that somebody, even now, as she was speaking, that your spirit and your soul and has begun to open up to realize that there is help. Help is available, no matter how bad it is. She's going to come back next week, and I want you to share this link. If you want to send some questions in that you'd like for her to answer next time, please do so. We're going to stop this episode of One-on-One. This 2-part series is called The Emotional Detox. And I want you to tune back in next week. We're going to go further. Dr. Celina is going to be back with us next week. Same time, same place, right here through the Hope TV. So share this link. And I hope that you're blessed and walk in the favor of God. And as John said to Gaius, beloved, I wish above all that you prosper, be in health, even as your soul, your psyche, your mind, your spirit, and your emotions, they prosper. So we're going to log off now. This episode of One-on-One with Dr. Celina Shemo is going to be back with us next week. We're going to continue this conversation on emotional detox. And as always, remember this: if you will be good to God, God's going to always be good to you. So take care of yourselves. We'll see you next time for One-on-One as we go to part 2 of the emotional detox. Peace and blessings to each of you. I love you guys.
What's up, y'all? It's your boy Jermaine, Dolly, Mr. Hello, Dolly himself, and guess what? You're tuned in to Tea and Worship with my homies, Mignon and Corey. Keep it locked, y'all.
Hey y'all, it's Candy West, and you're watching Tea and Worship with Mignon and Corey.
It's your boy James Fortune, and you are watching my favorite news show, Tea and Worship, with my sis Mignon and Corey.
What y'all looking for? You can find me here on the Hope TV. What y'all looking for? What y'all looking